What is going on? Today is Wednesday, August 31st. And my guest had to remind me when I was actually making this post, hey man, you put September. I guess I was a little too overzealous about having on the show, and I just got ahead of myself because we were discussing a September date. But as you're coming into the room, just let me know you're here. Very excited tonight to speak to this young lady and tell her story. Sort of like introduce her to the East Coast in a way because she is a Cali resident, but her music is amazing. And I come to know her through a very good friend of mine, a childhood friend of mine who actually made an appearance on the show. So salute to my guy and all the crew over at Noble House. Salute, salute. So we got in touch. We had a quick conversation, and she was very friendly, very humble, and she was like, fuck yeah, man, I'll sit down with you. I love the vibe. I like what you guys did, and I was very appreciative of that because some people want to Hollywood you. It happens. I've known people I know that I watched grow up hit me with that bullshit. Somebody told me to talk to their publicist one time. But on tonight's show, all the way from Cali, we're gonna welcome Miss Lil Flower Nasti. And she is a singer, songwriter, an artist encompassing all forms of expression. And her music is dope. I started checking her music out, and there's so many different iterations and styles of what she does. I could really appreciate that. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna run this track. We're gonna get the show started, and we're gonna have the conversation. And I hope we have a good time. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's go. As always, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mr. A. And tonight, as I stated earlier, I have the homie here, all the way from the West Coast, Miss Lil Flower Nasti. And tonight, we're just going to sort of have a great conversation, first and foremost, and get to know her and her music. So I hope everybody is, salute to my guy, Ephraim the Realist. I hope everybody's in for a good time. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot of fun. She's very personable. So without further ado, let's get this going. I want to welcome to the set, Miss Lil Flower Nasti.
Hey, man. How's it going?
How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Of course. No, thank you for giving me your time. I know that you're a very busy person. You got a lot going on. So anytime, somebody extends themselves, I'm very appreciative. And your response was humbling, to say the least.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
So how are things going thus far? Because you put in a lot of work when I started doing research. So
I've only been a musician. I mean, I've been singing my whole life, but I've only really started actively trying to pursue music for like the last 3 years. So I would say that I'm a relatively new artist in that sense, in the name Lil Flower Nasti, because before I kind of just like, sing in my car or whatever. But I started photographing the hip hop scene out here in the Bay Area. And once they kind of caught wind that I sang, I got kind of pushed in this direction, kindly but forcefully. And so I've had a lot of people making dope music and kind of influencing and mentoring me to kind of go, down just like really pushing myself to sing and be comfortable in front of people. Because I'm definitely a shyness,
You don't give that vibe off at all. Come on.
I mean, having conversations is one thing, right? But right. Being on stage is
totally
like
different.
Whole other thing.
Yes, that's very true. So let me ask you, now that you said that, 3.5 years is early, is very early, but it doesn't take away from your work, because what I'm seeing is great artistry. You know what I'm saying? Like there's music, everything fits. It's very rare that somebody gets in early. And when I mean early, it's 3 years. There's people have been backup singers for like 10, right? But to be 3 years in and to be cultivated in such a way, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mm,
Because every sort of version of you that I've seen thus far is fitting.
mm,
Nothing seems like it doesn't fit you.
mm,
So if you're going, sort of like a hip hop or a neo soul vibe, it fits.
mm,
And then you have this new cut with Noble House that when I heard Sticky, I was like, oh shit. Like they're
mhm,
taking it back, but it
mhm.
fits, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
So I want to know who in the family did the talent derive from as far as singing? Were there any singers in your family?
Well, actually, my dad was a bass player. He toured in the '60s with Jose Feliciano. Do you know
Of
who he is?
course.
And so he definitely influenced. I mean, we were surrounded by music, right?
Right, right,
He was retired pretty much by the time I was born, so it's not that we were necessarily on the road or anything when we were
right.
kids, but definitely a love for music and good music. I mean, just
Yeah.
so many different kinds was definitely um, in our soul. Like you just couldn't escape it, right?
Right.
And so he again, there weren't necessarily singers, but I just knew like as like a little kid, I just I just did it one day and
Right.
everybody was like, oh snap, like you can. So I just always did it. Like it was always something I kind of practiced and I would sing at weddings and stuff when I was a little kid. But I hit about 15 and then suddenly became self-aware in a weird way. And
Okay.
then stage fright kind of was cultivated. And I never had that problem before, but I just kind of was like, I just kind of stopped singing for a really long time because I couldn't really get past that like
Stage fright?
right. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Wow.
And I think too that my dad put the fear in me in terms of like the power of fame and
Oh,
what can happen to
right,
people. Because he
right.
wasn't necessarily famous, right? But he certainly saw a lot in the '60s.
In the life that he led. Yeah.
Right, right.
Saw it all.
Drugs and fans and all that stuff. Again, that's not necessarily something I'll ever have to deal with, but there's definitely like a little bit of a fear.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say something else, but no, no, no. I totally get it.
And just
Are you straight edge?
no. I mean, I don't I have the occasional drink. I like my
Okay.
THC and all that stuff, it depends on but in terms of like, coping mechanisms, right?
Oh, right.
I've definitely I've been around, I've lost partners to ODs and stuff. So I just am
Wow.
very careful around how I choose to cope with things. But with that said, I can't imagine not being able to walk down the street and just be anonymous. Like that's like one of my favorite things.
Right.
So losing that is scary, you
Right.
know. But again, I don't think that's ever something I'll have to worry about. You know
I
what I mean?
I
But,
I honestly think like to a degree, I get exactly what you're saying because when you do rise to a level of like, let's say Aretha Franklin,
right.
you can't go anywhere without people, right? But I think also there are factors that you can sort of incorporate into your life and how you deal
Hmm.
that can sort of mitigate people from having that like Michael Jackson possessive, oh my God, type of factor, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
However, I do understand remaining within yourself, autonomous, and being able to just live your life is a beautiful thing. And who wants to lose that?
Right.
But at the same time, I look at what you're doing now, and I say to myself, okay, does she really fear, or is it more of like something introspective of herself? Like, do you ever feel like do you doubt yourself?
Oh, I mean, of course. I mean, I definitely have imposter syndrome and stuff, right? Like, I don't know if you've
Okay.
heard that term, but at the same time, I think a lot of those people, like Amy Winehouse and the people that really, I don't want to say lost it, but what happened to them is that they were so young when they got pulled into the music industry and got that fame, and they
Mhm.
didn't have a chance to really fully know themselves and understand themselves in a
Right.
way that if they had become famous later in life, they would have maybe had more groundedness and um, just more coping mechanisms that weren't self-destructive.
Right.
And so I guess that's the difference for me is like, if for some reason that happened one day, I've had a lot of therapy, right? Like I just have a lot more of self-awareness, and just awareness of other people
Hmm.
to know like I would be okay, if that makes sense.
The experiences that you've had thus far have built a foundation that you're totally grounded in,
Right, right.
and
And
there's
just kind
no.
of just knowing how to read people and having a little bit of knowledge of how to not get taken advantage of. And, um, and that's another thing too with fame is like even your closest family can kind of switch it up on you, right? And so it gets hard
What?
to like trust people in a sense. But again, it's just about awareness, right? Like, and just
Yeah.
that time of kind of just watching others. Cause I've been in, photographing musicians since I was a kid. And
Mhm.
so I kind of see how people move around, the bigger name people. And I just have this like weird thing like, nope, I'm just not that person. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, cause at the end of the day, we're all people. And I
Yeah.
think that people lose sight of that sometimes.
The nature.
Yeah.
You feed the ego and the backbiting and the underhanded shit that goes on, or what can I get from her, or what can I get?
That
It's
part.
the nature of man and women. Like we just like
Yeah.
we're fucked up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess is the
and
easiest way.
and just I think a lot of people want fame, um again without realizing a lot of the things that come with that and the pressure. And so I think that's a big reason why I became a photographer, because I like being in the scene, but
Mhm.
there wasn't that pressure. I could just do me and everybody wasn't looking at me. But now I'm, definitely with practice. It's like driving,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
um when I first started driving, it was hella scary, and I was just like, ooh, and that's kind of how it is performing on stage, right? I'm like, ooh, but now that I have practice, I'm getting used to like, oh, okay, like I'm just hanging out with my friends.
You're finding your pocket.
Right, exactly,
That's what
exactly.
I
I mean,
get.
I'm not all the way there, but I'm
You
working my
get
way, just again, experience and practice is the biggest thing, so.
so. What was your first? I want to know all about the firsts. What
Okay.
was your first? What was your first experience in a studio setting like? Because I understand, me and Ben talked about that. He couldn't really remember, but I told him I was like, I understand, going into the studio when you're around your friends singing, or whatever, a wedding singing, or not to minimize that, but I'm just saying when you step into a studio, it's
Mhm.
something that can be very intimidating to people.
You know what's funny is the studio is less intimidating to me
Okay, there you
because
go.
I can mess up and I can do it again. You know what I'm saying? I think that's where I get in my head, because if I'm
Right.
on a stage, I'm like, don't mess up, don't mess up. Like I have that like playing in my
Uh-huh.
head, and then
Right, right.
hearing that so much, I'm like, wait, what was the next line? But in the studio, there's wiggle room. Again, I think my first time in a studio was with my friend UnLearn The World, who helped
Uh-huh.
me produce my first EP. And it was July 4th, and we were just kind of like, he'd been like waiting for me to be ready.
Uh-huh. Wow.
Because
Okay.
he was like, we would kick it all the time. And then there was just like this moment of inspiration.
Uh-huh.
We started writing, and I could just see it in his eyes. He was like, oh, I've been ready for this. All right, let's do it. And so it was just kind of his home studio. And he can be pretty tough in terms of like how he records,
Hmm.
just in like, because he's New York as well. And
Hmm.
so he's very straightforward and very like, not do it again. There's no, there like, and so I was a little like, but we went through that whole project. It took us maybe 6 months to write. We wrote everything together,
Right.
basically. These are my
Right.
concepts. Again, I'm a new artist, so writing is still I'm still kind of getting practice and confidence. I think that's like the biggest thing. I get in my own way in terms of like, is this good? I don't know. You know what I mean? And so we wrote that project together. And by the end of it, I mean, it was like the beginning of COVID.
Oh,
And by then I was like, okay, I had like a little bit more, again, confidence
the
behind,
comfortability was there.
sorry.
Your comfortability was there.
Right, right. And especially because that's my friend, right? And so, but then it started being like people asking me to come do hooks and stuff. And I just like, again, I could have like the lyrics in front of me, and I just kind of got in a pocket. I was like, oh, I know what to do, you
There
know?
you go.
But during COVID, I didn't have practice on stage. So I got a ton of practice in the studio and kind of like, okay, we can try it this way, we can try it that way, or I messed up, let me do it again. And just kind of knowing what I want it to sound like, or having like an idea of what I want something to sound, or how I want my voice to sound.
Right.
But it is only this past May that I started performing again. And so I've just been kind of taking any opportunity just to practice with a mic, because it's very different in a studio versus like mic control and dancing, or not even dancing, but just having a visually pleasing set that isn't just me belting it out. You know what I mean? And looking like,
are you doing live sets, or are you doing recorded sets? Are you working with a band, or everything is tracked out and just played out for you?
Most of it has been tracked out. I do have a set coming up that is a live band, so that will be my first. Again, a very different experience. I kind of almost feel like it's going to be better though, just because being up there and having nobody to kind of riff off of, and it just being me, people are looking at, is a little bit more pressure. So when I have people to kind of like interact with, because I had a DJ at one of my sets, and that made it like easier for me, because I could like, interact with him and talk to him. And I don't know, it's funny how the psychology behind what gets in our head, you know what I mean? But I'm stoked to be able to do it with a band, because all of this instrumentation that Gennessee has put together is big band at the end of the day. And yeah, it's cool as a track or whatever, but just seeing it come full circle and having like a bunch of musicians play that out, it's just gonna feel so much bigger,
For sure.
I'm excited.
Their energy, I'll tell you what, there are many genres of music, of course, R&B, rock, Latin, jazz, hip hop, whatever. In my experience, listening to a band in like R&B, rock, and Latin music, and let me add this one, I almost forgot it, reggae.
Right.
When you hear that music played live, it's something very different, right? Now, in your situation, that energy that they have and give to you is going to be your sort of like driving force.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They got big shoes to fucking fill, because they need to. I'm serious. They need to support you properly for you to convey the best show.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. And with the single that I heard, Sticky, man, that's a tall order. That's a tall order.
I think another thing too is, I don't want to say learning to be a leader, because it's not necessarily leading, but I definitely have been to some shows where it is a band backing up like an R&B artist, and I can just see the artist giving these hand signals to kind of let them know, oh, repeat that, or to kind of give them wiggle room to kind of improvise a little bit more, and not just like stick to this like very specific thing. So that's a skill set I haven't had experience with yet, and I'm excited to kind of get to know that part of performing, because the way I've always, performed is start to finish. And I know it I get a little bit messed up if it's a little different or whatever, you know what I mean? So being able to have that looseness and you're almost creating live is going to be something new for me, but I'm excited to try at least.
I honestly think you're going to be feeling very sultry in that moment. I think, no, I'm serious. I think, a lot of the music that I've heard from you thus far is, I like it. I like it. I truly do. This is the reason why I reached out, but I think that in those moments, in this growth period that you're going through, I think for me, looking at you as an artist, that live setting, I think, is really going to change your whole outlook on performing, because you're going to have a cast.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think when you start feeling yourself, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, and Jimmy on the bass, let's go, Jim. You know what I'm saying? I think it's gonna change your whole sort of perception of what you're doing up there.
Right. And just like being more free flow.
Right.
Instead of this like rigid, it has to be this or it's wrong kind of mindset, which I think that I've always been in, which is why performing is so intimidating.
You live in your head a lot, huh?
Oh yeah. I'm an overthinker,
Yeah, my son is a Cancer. He overthinks. I mean, it's good and it's bad. It serves its purpose. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But let's get back to a little bit more about you, as far as your personal life is concerned. So, what was being the daughter of a musician and being surrounded by music, um, you know, what is life for you like early, like high school, like junior high school? Are you performing? Are you into any of the arts? Or are you just very reserved, like to yourself kind of a girl?
I mean, I was always very outgoing as a young child
Hmm.
through high school. I wouldn't have considered myself an introvert. I was definitely very extroverted. Like teachers would, I mean, I'm very ADHD and very hyper and
I,
goofy and
I
just like,
couldn't tell.
um, and the teachers would always tell my parents, Sarah wants to teach the class, and I had no self control in that sense.
Right.
Um, and so music was something, I don't know, it just kind of came naturally to me. I just realized one day I could do it. And
Hmm.
so yeah, I think that I was just kind of doing like I was doing like national anthems and stuff for fishing derbies and stuff. Like again, it wasn't something I would like go out of my way to do, but once like someone realized I could do it, they would ask me to do it, and I'd be
Right.
like, okay, like I did it at my high school graduation and stuff like that. But mostly it wasn't me creating music or doing it the way that I'm doing it now. It was
Okay.
just kind of me copying somebody else's. Like I was really good at copying sounds.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I could copy like animal sounds too. Like I just realized I was really good at mimicking things.
Okay.
So outside of mimicking things, creation is a whole other world, right?
Of
And like
course.
making something that is my sound.
Right.
Like okay, I'm singing Alicia Keys, I'm singing Amy Winehouse, but what is Sarah? What is Lil Flower Nasty? And so
Exactly.
that's been a big part of this journey the last 3 years of like what makes me unique
Right.
and not just oh she sounds like Amy Winehouse or she sounds like you know what I mean
Right.
and so so again as like a kid being surrounded by musicians and stuff. I mean it was a different life I think than some of the people that I was around as a kid. I mean my dad was there was also the element that my dad was like 50 when I was born, and so
Wow.
a lot of the I didn't his friends didn't have children that were children. Their
Right. All
children
right.
were grown adults, and so I was also surrounded by adults mostly growing
Oh,
up.
okay.
And so I kind of had this it just made me a little bit of a weirdo. It made it hard to relate to other kids because I don't want to say expected to be an adult, but like I just
Yeah.
I was just having grown conversations as a very young person. And so I
Yeah.
would try to have those conversations with other kids and they'd be like, "We're over here playing hopscotch." Like
Yeah, I want to play with some mud pies. Don't
yeah,
come over
exactly.
here.
Like
Yeah.
so it definitely I don't want to say it isolated me in any way, but it was just definitely a different experience than I think most of the people I was growing up with.
Well, that's the funny thing. You sound like you were born in the '70s, and I'm not trying to pick your age. I don't, that's not appropriate for me
I
to
was born
do.
in the 90s, it's
No,
fine.
no. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I kind of figured that. But
Yeah.
in the '70s, when I
Yeah.
was born,
Uh-huh.
that's what it was. You were around adults, and you listened and carried on as an adult. We grew up faster. Like
Right.
nobody lets their kids go walking off to 10 blocks away from the house now without a
Right.
GPS and a whatever.
Right.
That's how we grew up,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Today is totally different. Now, speaking of growing up and stuff, I need to know how much of your personal life bleeds into your writing, or if does it at all? Does any of your
Yeah,
personal? It does.
absolutely. I mean, the I would say the project with Gennessee, he brought to me and it was ready.
Oh wow. Okay.
But it was written based off stories and conversations he and I had.
Mm.
So some of it is mentioning, like in Sticky, it's saying like my daddy was touring, so that it's based off my own personal experience. Again, he wasn't touring when I was a kid, so there's a
Right.
little bit of like
Yeah. Yeah.
embellishment or exaggeration or whatever. But definitely the blooming, the first project that I did with UnLearn, because he and I co-wrote it. I don't know if you heard that.
Was that Al Qaeda? What the
I live
fuck?
in the Tenderloin. Have you heard of the
What?
Tenderloin?
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking.
So welcome to
Wow.
my life.
Oh
I'm
wow.
like so unfazed by it, but yeah,
It
it's
is what it
always
is.
it's always a party,
Yeah. Hmm.
but yeah, the blooming I feel like was based off me first coming into the hip hop scene and kind
Hmm.
of my experience, more so as a photographer, but my life really did change when I found the hip hop scene in the Bay Area it was like 2018. I suddenly was getting hit on a lot, and I'm not necessarily used to that.
Okay.
In that way, at least. I just wasn't.
Very
I'm not
aggressive.
considered like a popular person, or at least that's my own perception of myself. So
Yeah.
maybe that's just my own imposter syndrome going back to that or whatever. But it was just a very different time, even compared to now, because COVID kind of changed a lot of those things in terms of like, shows just kind of stopped. A lot of the monthly events that were happening kind of stopped. They're slowly coming back, but there was just like this huge community that I suddenly was a part of and welcomed into with open arms. And it was such a like vibrant, amazing time when we were writing that album. But also to further to that, I was having these experiences with men that I had never experienced before in that way. And so a lot of those songs are kind of talking about that time period and that those new experiences that I just never experienced, if that makes sense.
No, makes perfect sense. I'm a father, so I sort of like understand where you're going.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
It's a little
tough.
different now. It's just, but I think I'm just more used to it, and I kind of know how to navigate it a little more. Also, part of that, which is it's stupid, but right around that time, I had just lost 50 pounds as well. And
Okay.
so that also changed the way that people approach me, which is sad and it shouldn't be that way. But that was definitely my experience. And suddenly people were giving me the time of day that hadn't necessarily given me the time of day before. Um,
Mm.
but so yeah, I wasn't used to the attention, I guess.
Was that sort of did that sort of do anything to yourself, like who you are as a person? Like,
Sure.
yo, these fucking dudes wasn't trying to holler before, and now all of a sudden,
Well, and especially dudes that had previously rejected me suddenly were like trying to holler, which made me really feel away because it was like, oh, you don't actually care about my
me,
dope self. You
yeah.
just you just didn't like me because I was chubby or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And so um I definitely felt a way about that. You know what I
But
mean?
but did you feel like, yeah, all right, fuck out of here? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
No,
Before now, you're like,
100%.
yeah, fuck you.
Yeah, and not in like a, oh, they like me now, yay. It was just like, oh, now you want a piece? Like
Good on you.
sure, I was a little more confident slightly, but my the essence of me hadn't changed other than my
You were still the
appearance,
same
right?
person.
So it's like, why is it why now?
Hold
You
on,
know
let
what
me
I
drop
mean?
a bomb for you real quick.
Yeah.
No self-esteem issues here, ladies. You gotta love yourself first, because nobody else will if you don't.
Right. And
That's a
so
fact.
I'm sure that like suddenly having all these options helped. Like
Right.
I can't really say, but I definitely was just like, dude, like like for me, and when I look for men or whatever, personality is the most important thing to me.
Right.
So for someone to not be able to recognize my dopeness until I've lost weight, like I'm like, you're whack. You're shallow. You know what I mean? Like you're not someone that cares about me. Like
Right. Right.
you just want peace now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely it made me it and further to that, it almost confirmed this weird thing in my head that I wasn't attractive before.
Oh wow.
You know what I mean? And so that makes me, even though I know, like I
Right.
know
Right.
that like that wasn't necessarily the case, but it just makes you go like, damn man, that's really, you know?
You're so corny. I'm glad.
Yeah, it's like it's
I'm glad
shallow
we're
and
not
whack.
friends.
Yeah. And so and then there are definitely people that have just been constant in my life, regardless of how I look, right? So
Right.
you know, it's just it did change a lot for me. But
Okay.
again, there is the simultaneousness of also entering the hip hop scene at the same time. And, I was photographing all these people and, I was just kind of everywhere. I'm just like this weird hustler. Like, I just would never sleep and go to every show and just get these photos of people hella quick. And so I just suddenly made a name for myself in a way that I just was there suddenly. And people were like,
Right.
oh, who's this new person? Who's this new chick that's on the scene, like taking all these photos? I see her name everywhere. So it just brought this, again, this new kind of spotlight to me that I guess I didn't expect. Even though
Right.
that's what I was like, I was just hustling, but I didn't expect that.
Well, your work was speaking for itself. One, you solidified your position because the work was talking the talk, and people take notice to good shit. There are still a lot of good people in the world that, are official and keep it 100.
Hmm.
And those people will find you because of your energy.
Hmm.
And I think people really need to start remembering that when you put that good, real energy, that authentic, organic energy, good shit will come to you. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? And I believe that's the reason why I'm talking to you right now. Let me get a bomb for that. Let me get a bomb for that.
You know? Exactly.
So let me ask you.
Yeah.
It sounds like I'm listening to the things that you've endured, and I say that respectfully.
Sure.
Um, you know, being a young woman, and you said your dad has passed already, right?
Hmm.
And I assume you were very young when he passed.
It was about 11 years ago. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I
Okay.
was like 19-ish.
What was the relationship between you and your father like? Being that he's an older gentleman, he could still communicate, and you guys can have a relationship. But what I'm trying to get at is how strong was the bond between you and your father?
I would say complicated. In the end, it was great, but there was it was complicated in the sense that there was a pushback as me as a young person wanting to sing and him being scared to death of me being like a groupie or like getting taken advantage of in the music industry. And so instead of
Can I translate?
yeah, yeah,
He
yeah,
was afraid for his baby girl to go out to the wolves that he knows that are waiting.
right.
And I totally get that.
Yeah. And it's a little different now, I feel. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but
Mhm.
the 60s were a different time.
Very much so.
And so the things that I mean, dude, like my dad was just known for having a girl at every port, right? So like he was kind of projecting his
Project.
own sense of self and maybe seeing me as a young person being impressionable or whatever and getting taken advantage of, you know what I mean? And so he didn't want me to be in that position, but it didn't come out that way. It
Of
came out
course,
very like
never
I
does.
wasn't even allowed to go to concerts as a teenager. I was like sneaking to go to concerts, you know what I mean? And like he was so scared. So scared.
Women are relentless.
Right, and, like, at the end of the day, I'm a hustler, dude. I'm gonna do what I gotta do to create my art at the I mean, I was taking photos when I was 13, 14. You know what I mean, of
Yeah.
concerts and stuff. So,
Oh, wow.
there definitely was, like, a head-buttedness because the way it came out was a lot it wasn't so clear cut. It wasn't him just saying I recognize that now as an adult, but back then, it was, "My daughter's not gonna be groupie." You know what I mean?
But
As a
why gotta be a groupie though? Why are you
right,
immediately taking me
right.
there? Like, dude, you're
Scared
supposed
to
to
death,
groom me.
dude.
Yeah.
Scared to death. But again, by the time maybe I was 17, 18, he'd had multiple strokes. Like he wasn't
Oh, wow.
the healthiest guy. And there was a point where he lost his vision in the same day that I got my driver's license. So suddenly the roles kind of had to switch, right? Where I was kind of taking him around. And just for context, my dad was a child actor and he
Okay.
was, working from the time he was like 8 years old, right? And so he bought his parents their first house when he was 11. And so for him, he was a very independent person his entire life. So suddenly now he's having to depend on other people because he can't see. That was very hard for him. But at the same time, it also gave us a chance to kind of bond a little bit more. And so
Hmm.
by the end, we really were close and had more open conversations around this type of stuff and like where all that stuff was coming from.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, he did end up taking his own life because he was sick and just a lot of stuff just kind of transpired around just like his fear of I don't know, being a burden or something or being not being able to make the decisions while he still could, if that makes sense. And so
Yes.
it was wild. It was a wild time, but at the same time, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here. Cause
Wow.
like I was in a place where I was, 17, 18, 19, caretaking my dad. And I was happy to do it. Like, I was like, all right, like this is what my life is now. But in the last few days, he was just like, it's not your job. Like you need to go be yourself. And I didn't fully understand what he was trying to say, you know what I mean? But So as traumatic and wild as that time period was, I definitely know I wouldn't have moved up here. I wouldn't have experienced the amazing things that I've experienced. And again, I wouldn't have been mad to like be down in Palmdale taking care of my dad. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Exactly.
But I do look back and just go like, you know, I I'm grateful that I am here, you know, and
Mhm.
that that I'm at the point where I am making my art and, you know, semi thriving in San Francisco.
In the
In
tenderloin.
the TLs, you know, I'm making it work, you know, and as a full-time photographer on my own. So that in
Hmm.
itself is an accomplishment, let alone the music that I'm making and the people that I'm working with and the people that have given me opportunities to work with them. I just, you know, I'm grateful and it's wild to me. Like I'm like, I just never would have known. You know what I
I,
mean?
I want to say something to you respectfully.
Yeah, yeah.
I think unconsciously, and you may agree or disagree, right now, unconsciously, you're in the position that you're in because, in some crazy way, shape, or form, your dad really prepared you for this moment.
100% consciously. 100%.
Okay.
100%. Because I learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
And he put the fear in me, but it in a good way. Like there are conversations I've had where maybe most people would be like, I've made it. But I approach those conversations very carefully and
Hmm.
very like in a way that, okay, this could be a thing, but let's make sure it's done right and where
Hmm.
everybody is feeling like they're not being taken advantage of, you know, and I wouldn't, if I didn't have my dad telling me those stories as a young person, I wouldn't know that. You know what
Right.
I mean? So 100% I was prepared. He prepared me to
It's a
be in
beautiful.
this moment. You know
It's a
what I mean?
beautiful thing. It's a
Yeah,
beautiful thing.
I'm grateful for that for sure.
Now let's, since we're on the topic of pops and music, right, and these
Mhm.
lessons, what are some of your most inspirational artists that you still listen to? Like, I know I grew up. My mom, for a very short time, was a bartender as a child, and she had racks. I don't know if you're gonna know what these are. They were called 45s.
Mhm.
They were records about this big. They
Mhm.
came with this yellow thing you used to put in the record player so it would fit.
Mhm.
My mom, uh, the Manhattans, the OJs, um, you know, there's so many different people I can name. And to this day, in my halftime of life, I can still listen to the records and they just speak to me.
Mhm.
So are there any artists that you grew up on that to this day that you play them, or just artists that you just, grew up loving?
I feel like I go through phases with music.
Okay.
And that doesn't necessarily mean I don't come back to those artists because
Right.
they will always be a part of me and they've influenced how I view music and how I move in terms of how I sing.
Hmm.
Um, but it's like I would say for one, I've mentioned Amy Winehouse a lot. That's something that is definitely. I mean, I mean, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, I was really on Amy Winehouse. Like, I was really listening and like studying the way that she sings and the way and the stuff she talks about because she has this like almost slightly depressing but upbeat way of moving, and I was
Right.
really fascinated with that. But I mean, as a kid, I was hella listening to like Smokey Robinson and like a lot of these um, kind of like love songs from that time period. Is that Motown? Would you consider that Motown?
I mean, you
No.
were hearing Motown, but that wasn't the Motown time.
Right, right, right. And it's funny because some of the stuff I can't even tell you the names. I know the songs, you know what I mean? I could sing them, but I can't even tell you who sang it because it
You
just
don't know the artist, but you know the song.
yeah, because it just played so much in the background. But specifically, my dad was mostly listening to jazz. And
Okay.
so there's a lot of jazz influence, Thelonious Monk and just like hella, but like intricate jazz stuff, which again, I couldn't name what it is
Yeah,
because
yeah.
my dad was a Grammy voter at like a lifetime Grammy voter or whatever. And so back then you could pay a penny, like around the Grammy voting time, they
Uh-huh.
would basically send you like this list um, because they were trying to get the music out for you to hear it so you could vote on it, right? And
Right.
so you pay a penny for all these CDs. And so every year he would buy 100 CDs of like, oh, this jazz, other stuff too, because he was hell into classical, which don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't like classical. I know it very well, but it's not necessarily something that influences me. But the jazz for sure, like the way that, you know, even the music, uh the different experimentations, and you know, my buddy Z-Man, the way he raps is kind of like that, right? Like
Yes.
the rap isn't just a flow. It's like he kind of is like da 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 da. You know what I mean? Very jazzy, which is something that I don't necessarily hear in rap a lot. Maybe I just am not. I haven't heard it all. You know what I mean? But
I don't know.
there's something interesting to me about that. I'm not necessarily singing in that way, but I mean, again, as a young person, I really liked Alicia Keys, like, you know, stuff like that. I know that that's like really poppy and
No,
very
but that's your time,
right.
right?
I mean, as a young person, I was like Christina Aguilera, you know what I mean? But the girl can sing, dude.
No,
Like
she can.
I mean, as a like that was probably one of the first songs I was trying to sing as a 7-year-old. You
Oh
know,
wow.
just like trying to see how far I could push my voice in the way that she had control or whatever. That doesn't necessarily influence my music now, but it's definitely part of my history. And just like, but again, only recently, I started taking voice lessons because I noticed when I would perform, I would hurt myself
Mhm.
because my instinct is to like scream it out.
Right.
So I'm realizing these artists aren't necessarily screaming. You know, there's a control that I'm learning so that I don't hurt myself every time I perform.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I was just raised around so much music. At one point, I had like 900 gigabytes of downloaded music, but
She,
like all kinds of stuff, world music, like Tropicalia from Brazil in the 70s, and then like um, um, uh, why can't I think of his name? Like Afro funk and just I don't know. There's so many like Bjork at some point I just
oh wow.
loved or Portishead. You know, there's so many. I just love music so
Right.
much, you know, and so it's hard to say one person that has influenced me
Oh no,
because
no,
it's
no.
so you
I want to
know.
hear about the collective.
Right. I
You
mean,
know?
even Portishead, like I kind of use some of what the effects that they do. I love putting that on some of the music that I make. You kind of hear that in the blooming a little bit.
Mhm.
Kendrick Lamar, I mean, even like the way that he story tells the concept. I am obsessed with concept albums. That's
Really?
my jam. Like the idea of start to finish, it's a story. You're being taken through a story from start to finish. And the songs can stand on their own. But if
Right.
you listen to the entire experience as a whole, you're getting this story. So I can sometimes get a little stuck on concept albums and the want to have a story. And I think that has frustrated previous producers because I'm like, nah, dude, it's got to be because for me, like a whole project is an art piece. Yeah, you can have an album full of random things, and that's cool. I'm not hating on that.
Right.
But for me, like as an artist, I really like the storytelling and like Good Kid, Mad City. Like, dude, like that. I want an album that makes me feel so emotional from start to finish because you're really listening to this character. I mean, it's him, but it's a character too. Go through this experience that's relatable to people.
Mhm.
And you can get that. You can have a story in a song, right? But I do love that's kind of why I've had these like, okay, it's a hip hop one. This one is a little bit more in the funk. The one that I'm doing with Gennessee is a little bit more Motown. Um, uh, but again, I even like Tyler the Creator. Like I like so many. I just love music. So I mean, I do lean towards more of like sad stuff.
Uh-huh.
Uh, uh, I mean, even like Tyler Creator's more in like the horror rap, which is kind of cool to me. Like the first songs I was kind of making on my own were very much in that way. And I think that people have kind of, mostly men, have pushed me out of that because they're like, people don't want to see that from this young, pretty girl. And I'm like, but
It's what I want to do.
yeah,
Make me
and
happy.
sure, like I,
Yeah.
I I definitely have pushed more towards, okay, like it doesn't necessarily have to be this like grungy, you know, hard to listen to thing. Because for a while, I liked the idea of like horror jazz, where it's like I would take old songs, like I'd rather go blind and kind of flip it and make it
Uh-huh.
about like I'd rather gouge your eyes out. You know what I mean? Because then it's like as opposed to like being this woman that is like, I'd rather be blind than realize that you're being a piece of crap to me. You'd be like, no, I'm gonna fuck you up. You know what I mean? But
Do you
again,
like
I,
do you like Alanis Morissette?
I did. I like her, she was cool. That's a little bit more, I don't want to say folky, but I think that more of my influence is definitely in like soul and
Mhm.
just kind of like um there was a period where I've listened to rock. It's not that I don't like rock. I don't know if she's rock. I don't know what you would consider her, but
Alternative. I don't know.
alternative, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I mean, Nirvana and stuff, like this kind of like angsty. I go through phases for sure, but nothing has taken away my love for R&B and my love for hip, just that kind of, I don't know, it just makes me feel the most
Connected.
emotion, I
Right.
guess.
Yeah.
Music is emotion for me and definitely a way for me to express fully how I'm feeling and maybe get out what I'm feeling.
Mhm.
But I guess, people have said like music is what you create isn't just for you. So I have to recognize that sometimes, or be reminded of that because I am also creating for other people to relate to and feel something that they're like, oh, I felt that in my gut. And not just what I'm saying, but the beat too. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like something that starts out with a beat that you're like, wow, this is like you're like overwhelmed by the music and then the story comes in and you're just like, damn, dude, like this whole this thing as a whole just makes me feel like you've been slapped. That's like the kind of music I love and aspire to create, you know what I mean?
And,
So
and that's the project that we're focused most on now, right? The project with Noble House is something that it's an entire album, right?
yeah, it's my first full length album.
What's the name of the project?
It's called Sticky.
It is
So
titled Sticky.
yeah, so Sticky is the first one we dropped, but the whole project is called Sticky. And that was a cool experience working with Gennessee because what a kind person.
How did
What
that
just
come to
like
be?
a So I photographed Gennessee at one of these um it's called Wax Trip, and it was a monthly hip hop showcase in Oakland.
Okay.
And he performed, and I took his photos, and we became friends on Facebook, but we didn't speak. But he was watching. He was silently watching. And he kind of came to me maybe a year ago, and he was like, "Yo, like," because I would just kind of post random videos of me in my car. Usually, I'd be feeling away, and I would be like, all right, I'm going to sing this song just because I just needed to get out whatever it was I was
Right.
feeling, whether it was like, who knows who it was. Cleo Soul was at the time was who I was singing a lot. I don't know if you've heard her, but
Yeah, yeah.
amazing. Go check her out. And he was basically like, I've been listening to you singing and I have this idea for a project that I think that your voice would sound really cool on. He really wanted to make a Motown project. He'd never done something like that, I guess, before. From what I understand. I
Right.
didn't realize that in the moment, but I guess he's never done something like this. And so he sent me some songs with his references and stuff. And I was like, yo,
Oh,
because
so he came at you all the way through. It wasn't one of those things where he was talking to you and you're like, yeah, this nigga's blowing smoke.
no, he was like, I was like, sure. Because, I've had people send me stuff that, I'll give everybody a shot. Like
Yeah.
if it's written and you want me to just come sing on your song, like send me a reference and beat and I'll come through. But then he sent me these and no one had sent me something like this stuff.
Okay.
Because I know a lot of hip hop producers, so it's mostly in the hip hop. And there's elements of hip hop in this, but it's more like I was like, yo, like this is the closest to what I've been trying or envisioning myself singing. This is like the most singing that I've done on projects.
Right.
Because the blooming was there was rap and there was a little bit of singing, but it wasn't me like belting it out and really getting the chance to like kind of not showcase my talents, but just have more singing. And so he gave me these references and he basically was just like, I just want you to do what you do with them. And so I took them and I listened to them over and over and I made it my own. And I was like, I would take things that were a little bit more clear cut and I would kind of add a little, of my own thing into it just to kind of like, add my flavor, I guess.
Right.
And he was just like, yo, like he just knew how to kindly bring the best of me out.
Wow.
because a lot of producers that I had experience with, they wanted it to be how they wanted it to be,
Very rigid.
as opposed to I want to see what you can do with this.
Mm.
And he knew how to communicate because he's just like the most positive, kind human, and so he really knew. I'm sensitive, I'm sensitive, and I'm self-conscious about this stuff. So it's easy for me to shut down because I'm already like nervous doing it. And he just
Mm.
did it in a way that really brought out what I knew I could do and what he knew I could do. And so it was so quick. It was crazy. Like we did all, it's 9 songs. We did all 9 songs in like 3 sessions or 4 sessions max, maybe.
What?
Which in the past, had taken maybe a year and a half or whatever. But again, also I didn't help write this. So that aspect of it was already done. But, I took it, I practiced it, and we got in there, did 2 or 3 songs at a time. And then I was like, wow, that was really easy.
It sounds like you needed the right person to curate your spirit and your talent and just put you in the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think,
you brought the best in you.
I think too, Gennessee has a talent in really being able to read people and see like, okay, this person has this in them.
That's Brooklyn.
Is it?
That's Brooklyn.
Is it? I didn't know.
Yeah, that's a Brooklyn thing.
Huh.
Because you grew up early in Brooklyn.
Right. Especially in the 70s, right?
Hello.
Yeah. Because y'all are childhood friends, right?
Yeah, me and Gennessee, we actually went to high school together. Okay. And our history is crazy because there's so many characters and so many people that have gone on to do different things, music wise, sports wise, street wise. Like there's all these different characters that we grew up with. Mm-hmm. And it was a special time. It was definitely a special time in Brooklyn during that time in the 90s. So right around the time you was being born.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know.
It was out there. Yeah, it was. But
he moved out there in high school, I think, right?
I'm sorry?
Because he moved, I know he was born in Berkeley, but he moved out there, I think, in like high school-ish.
Yeah, like I think his high school years or his junior high school years, he moved back to New York. And then, yeah, man, we traveled in the same circles. We got a lot of the same friends. And he was always, the one thing I liked about him was that he was very observant. He's like a childhood friend of mine, my guy that I grew up with since I'm 10. Very quiet, reserved personality. But when you were cool with him, like if you were friends, it was love, and he's never, that demeanor about him has never changed. So that perceptiveness that you're speaking about is the Brooklyn in him. You have to learn from a young age to be like, I see that shit coming,
And another thing I really respect too is that he makes a very conscious effort to not speak badly about people. So if and not in a fake way,
right?
He's just very like, and he kind of navigates those conversations very well. Like he doesn't, it's no shit talking. And again, he doesn't check anybody for shit talking. He's just really good about navigating that subject or just not speaking on it. Because at the end of the day, it's not our business how he feels about XYZ, right? Or vice versa. I mean, you can speak on how you feel about something, sure. Like, right. But I respect that he's really good about keeping things in a place, in a professional place, in a positive place. And I take note of that.
And so is he. Yeah. Trust me.
Yeah. I'm like, because it's like, that when I know that when I'm not in the room, he's not going to be speaking
ill
about me. You know what I mean? In general. And so I respect that a lot. I have a lot of love for the guy, Yeah.
I'm hoping that there are a lot of beautiful things that come out of this project because I do really respect not only the work but the talent, because it speaks to me. It's good music, and good music, just speaks to a kid. I love music just like you do. You know what I'm saying? So when you hear good shit, you're like, oh man, this is crazy.
And it makes me feel a way hearing it. I'm like, that's me. Because I just never knew I'd have the opportunity to do something like that.
Listen, the right time, the right person, just to put you right in the pocket. So All right, let's talk about what we want to see for the very immediate future. Like what can we expect to see from Lil Flower Nasty in the very near future? What are you hoping to do?
Yeah, I mean, so right now we're just slowly rolling this project out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have a music video in the works. We have a new song coming with my buddy Z-Man that mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so a lot of that is mainly what's going to be coming out in the next few months,
Mm-hmm.
next 6 months or so.
Nice.
Just rolling out this project slowly. We kind of have, one song at a time just to kind of give each song its own spotlight and love. And so right now it's just, the Motown kind of vibes. I really hope that I continue making music with Gennessee, because this is definitely what in my heart feels like the most me. But in the meantime, I'm just kind of, making sure I'm getting my chops up on performing,
Yeah.
and just getting more comfortable on the stage, doing things like this, just having conversations with people, which I really thank you so much, for chatting with me. And
Listen, this is all about you, young lady.
I know, I
You
know.
know what I'm saying?
But yeah, just music wise, it's the next 6 months is really going to be us, finishing up and pushing these songs and putting love into this kind of story that we've created, um, and just kind of see, I wish that I could say I had more goals that I could share, but mainly through music, things have just kind of happened, and I've
Mhm.
kind of just gone with the flow, and it's been a really beautiful experience. Doesn't mean I should never make goals, but I think that me being open has allowed more to come in, because I'm not so so focused on going one way that I miss the stuff that's happening in my peripheral. I'm
Yeah.
just kind of like, all right, let's see what happens,
Mm. It's all
That's kind
about the rollout. It's all about the
yeah,
rollout right
I'm
now.
gonna roll out, right. And that can be planned, so I'm definitely a planner in that sense. I have, my this is the way I'm pushing it. But yeah, for now it's just, the stuff with Genesee sticky. It's coming, you
Say it
know.
again.
So I'm excited for that. I'm really and just excited to see how people feel when they listen to it, if they relate
Mm.
to it, you know. Because that for me, that's important, that I'm making something that other people can hear and be like, wow, I'm not alone. I feel that. You know what I mean? Like I didn't, I relate to that, and it feels good to hear that other people are going through that as well, especially as a chick, like dudes can go through some of that too. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of it is like, just kind of navigating. I mean, the whole project is really about kind of what we were speaking on, and fame and how people act differently once
Mhm.
that happens. Again, not that I'm famous, but just speaking to that just kind of subject, and how people just kind of switch up, or dudes come back, or
Oof.
so it's one of those things I have experienced without fame, so it's wild. Like, like you see something, you're now you want to be in here, so but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
We're working on the rollout, and we're very, very attentive to the reception of the artwork that she's putting out, and it's very important to her.
Yeah.
And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, if you just joined, your shit out of luck, and you're gonna have to watch it on the rerun. But I want to say to my guest, talking to you was the easiest thing I've done yet so far, because you just you on it. I don't gotta, I say one thing and just say we're getting everything out. I don't gotta ask no details, nothing. And I appreciate that about you. You're very
Thank you.
forthcoming, very open and honest, and I really appreciate that about you. However, in speaking of fame, don't never get too big that you can't come back and holler
Never.
at your boy again, because
No.
this is your house. You got something to promote. The new singles dropping. I'm expecting a DM. I'm expecting an email. Yo, Mr. A, this is the new joint. I want you to promote this for me. Blah 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 blah.
Thank you.
And we here for it all. All right.
I really appreciate chatting with you, man. Yeah, this has been great. So thank you very much.
All right, let's drop a bomb for her real quick, because amazing guest. But I'm gonna tuck you in the green room. I'm gonna close the show out, and then we'll talk, because there's two questions I gotta ask that I know I'm being bothered about.
No, no, all good. Yeah, yeah.
All right, ladies
Thank
and
you.
gentlemen, all the way from Cali, Get that single, Sticky. It's Lil Flower Nasti. Thank you so much, lover. I just sit tight for a second, all right?
All right.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, man, if you missed it, go back to the YouTube page, the set 6145. Go look up Lil Flower Nasti and check it out. She really put it down tonight. Gave up so much about herself. Was super energetic, super honest, super humble. And I really appreciate her giving us the time because that young lady, I have a really, really strong feeling with what she's put together right now. It's going to be something serious coming. I don't think the world's ready just now, but we're going to see it happen here firsthand, front and center. All right. So check us out this coming Sunday. We got another amazing guest. I hope everybody had a good time, and we'll be seeing you next week.